10-year-old Maya has spent every Saturday morning at the diner across from the Iron Wolves MC clubhouse, watching the same routine unfold. Rough men in leather, the thunder of Harley engines, the smell of burned rubber and loyalty. She's invisible to them, just another kid nursing hot chocolate while her grandmother works the register. But when she notices something wrong with the chain on the president's bike during a routine morning, her innocent observation unravels a plot that goes deeper than anyone expected. What begins as a child's curious question becomes the thread that saves lives and exposes corruption that reaches into the sheriff's office itself. By the time the sun sets, Maya will have learned that courage has nothing to do with age, and that sometimes the smallest voice speaks the loudest truth. The bell above the diner door chimed at 6:47 a.m., and Maya didn't look up from her scrambled eggs. She never did. Looking up meant being seen, and being seen meant being asked questions she couldn't answer about why a kid her age was at the Iron Wolves MC clubhouse every Saturday morning instead of sleeping in like normal kids. Her grandmother, Dorothy, wiped her hands on her apron and moved toward the coffee station without breaking stride. 30 years at Rosie's diner had taught her the rhythm of the regulars, and there was no rhythm more reliable than the Iron Wolves showing up at dawn, hungry and loud. Maya traced the edge of her plate with her fork, listening. She could identify each biker by his footsteps now, heavy boots, worn leather creaking, the clink of chains and keys. Marcus always came first. He had that particular way of moving, purposeful and centered. Then came Ghost, whose boots scraped the tiles. Then Diesel, whose breathing was heavier, louder. And finally, always last, came Tank, the president. His shadow fell across the linoleum first, and then his voice followed, gravelly and warm. "Morning, Dorothy." The usual. "Coming right up, hon." Maya risked a glance. Tank was already settled in the corner booth, his massive frame filling the space like he owned it, which, in a way, he did. Not the diner, the road, the loyalty of 43 men, the weight of promises made 23 years ago when he was just another kid trying to survive. He caught her looking and winked. She quickly returned her attention to her eggs, but her heart had picked up its pace. That wink meant something. She wasn't invisible after all. Outside, the morning light was turning gold. Through the diner window, Maya could see the bikes lined up like sleeping dragons. Harleys mostly. Some customized so heavily they barely resembled their original blueprints. Tank's was the centerpiece, a 2003 Road King with a custom paint job. Cherry red, with black flames that looked like they were actually moving in the dawn light. The chains were polished to a mirror shine, the leather seat worn smooth by years of miles and stories. She'd watched him maintain that bike 100 times. Watched him check the tire pressure, the oil, the spark plugs. Watched him run his hands over the frame like he was reading Braille, feeling for any imperfection, any weakness, any sign of trouble. This morning, Maya noticed, something was different. She set down her fork carefully and stood up, pretending to head for the bathroom. Instead, she moved to the window and pressed her face close to the glass. The chain on Tank's bike, the primary drive chain that connected the engine to the rear wheel, had a link that looked wrong. The metal seemed to catch the light differently, as if it had been filed or cut partway through. Maya's stomach did a slow roll. She'd watched enough nature documentaries with her grandmother to know what a weakness looked like. That link wouldn't break under normal riding conditions, but on a highway, at speed, with the full torque of a V-twin engine behind it, it would snap. "Everything okay, baby?" Her grandmother appeared with the coffee pot, refilling Tank's cup without asking. "Mm-hmm," Maya said, but she was still staring out the window. Tank was laughing about something, his voice a low rumble that made the other bikers grin. He had no idea. None of them did. They were talking about a run to the mountains this afternoon, a delivery they had to make. A route they'd mapped out last night over beers and pool. Maya turned back to look at him, really look at him. He was a big man, scarred, with grey threading through his black beard. He had eyes that missed nothing except, apparently, a sabotaged chain. Those eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and he was smiling now, relaxed, planning a ride that would end badly if she didn't say something. But what could a 10-year-old girl say that wouldn't sound crazy? Maya sat back down at her booth, but the eggs had gone cold. She pushed them around her plate, thinking. Dorothy appeared with the coffee pot again, this time heading toward the biker's table. Marcus was telling a story about a cop who'd tried to pull over Ghost last week and had given up after a quarter-mile of highway. He just backed off, Marcus was saying. Probably figured Ghost's bike was too fast to chase. The table erupted in laughter. Tank set down his coffee cup carefully. That's because Ghost rides smart, smooth. Bike's an extension of him. You respect the machine. The machine respects you. He paused, and his voice dropped into something more serious. You neglect it. Don't pay attention to details, and the road will remind you why that was a mistake. It was the kind of thing he said often. Wisdom delivered casually, the way you'd mention the weather. But Maya had learned that Tank's casual remarks were usually the most important ones. She watched him check his watch, a Harley-Davidson model, silver and heavy. 8:15 a.m. He'd be heading out to the clubhouse soon, probably do a final walk around of the bikes, and then they'd leave for the mountains by 10. The chain would hold for maybe 30 minutes of highway riding, maybe 45 if they were lucky. Maya's hands were shaking as she raised her hand. Dorothy was across the diner, refilling the coffee station. The bikers were still laughing. Nobody noticed except Tank, who glanced over with mild curiosity. She waved her hand again, more insistent this time. Tank raised an eyebrow. He wasn't used to being signaled by a 10-year-old girl. He stood up anyway, all 6'4" of him, and walked over to her booth. Up close, he was even bigger. The smell of leather and motor oil and something else, something like dawn and asphalt, came with him. Something wrong, kid? His voice was gentle. That was the thing about Tank that surprised people who didn't know him. The size and the scars suggested violence, but his voice could smooth the edges off broken things. Maya swallowed hard. Your bike. Tank didn't move. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. A kind of alertness that hadn't been there a second before. What about my bike? The chain, Maya said quickly, the words tumbling out. The big one that connects to the back wheel. There's a link that looks broken, or cut, I'm not sure, but it looks wrong. Tank was silent for a long moment. Then he turned and walked toward the window without another word. Marcus, Ghost, and Diesel all followed him, their casual morning energy shifting into something different, something alert. Through the window, Maya watched Tank approach the Road King. He knelt down beside it, running his fingers over the primary chain with the same careful attention he gave to everything. His jaw tightened. She saw it happen. The moment his fingers found what she'd seen, his head turned and he looked back at the diner window. At Maya. She couldn't read his expression from this distance, but she could read his body language. The bikers had taught her that much without knowing they were teaching her. Tank's shoulders had straightened. His posture had changed from relaxed to ready. He'd found something. Dorothy emerged from the kitchen, frowning. Maya, honey, what did you say to him? That his chain looked broken, Maya whispered. Her grandmother's hand went to her mouth. Oh, sweetheart. Through the window, Tank was already on his phone, his voice too low to hear, but his urgency obvious. The other bikers were examining the chain now, passing around a hand mirror to see it from different angles. Their breakfast sat cooling on the table, forgotten. 5 minutes later, Tank came back inside. He walked straight to Maya's booth and sat down across from her, his massive frame folding carefully into the space meant for a regular-sized human. Up close, his eyes were grey-blue, like storm clouds. You know anything about bikes? He asked. No, Maya said quietly. "I just watch." "You watch good," Tank said. And then, more quietly, that chain was cut. Partway through. Another 20 minutes on the highway, and it would have snapped. At 70 miles per hour, that would have locked up the rear wheel. He paused. "We would have crashed." Maya felt her chest go tight. "Thank you," Tank said, and he meant it completely. The words carried weight. "You probably just saved 4 lives." By noon, the Iron Wolves had moved from breakfast to business. Tank had cancelled the mountain run. Instead, every patch-wearing member within 50 miles had converged on the clubhouse, their bikes lining the parking lot like a show of force. Maya watched from the diner, not obviously, but through the careful angles she'd learned. The reflections in the coffee station mirror, the glimpses through the kitchen window when she helped her grandmother with dishes. Something had shifted in the town's air. The bikers weren't laughing anymore. Tank had taken the chain to a machine shop 3 blocks away and had it analyzed. The cut was deliberate, professional. It had been made to fail at exactly the right stress point, which meant whoever had done it knew what they were doing. By 2:30 p.m., Tank was back at the clubhouse, and the meeting had turned serious. Maya was supposed to be doing homework in the back booth, but she was actually listening to the bikers' conversations as they moved through the diner. Ghost and Marcus kept stopping by, ordering coffee they didn't drink, leaving cash on the counter, murmuring things to Tank when they thought no one was paying attention. "Could have been anyone," Ghost said at one point, his voice low. "Wasn't random," Tank replied. "Not with that cut. Someone wanted to send a message." The serpents. This was Marcus, mentioning a rival club from 3 counties over, maybe, or closer to home. The door to the diner chimed, and a man in a sheriff's uniform walked in. Deputy Sheriff Colton Hayes. Maya recognized him because he came in every Tuesday for pie and always left a small tip despite his large coffee cup. He had the kind of face that looked friendly until you looked closer and saw the calculation behind his eyes. He ordered a slice of apple pie and coffee, and then he walked directly to Tank's booth. "Heard you had some trouble with your bike," Colton said, settling into the seat across from Tank without asking permission. Tank's jaw tightened. "News travels. It does in a town this size." Colton smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Chain cut from what I heard. That's serious business. You want to file a report? I could investigate." "I'll handle it," Tank said quietly. "I'm sure you will." Colton took a bite of pie, chewing slowly. "But that's the kind of thing that could lead to violence if you're not careful. You and your club go looking for revenge, and suddenly we've got a situation on our hands. Bodies, trouble, bad press for the town." He paused. "I'd hate to see that happen." Tank didn't respond. "Just a friendly warning," Colton continued. "I know you're a good man, Tank. I've known you 10 years, but some things are better left to professionals." After Colton left, Tank sat very still for a long time. Then he turned and looked directly at Maya. She froze, caught. He gestured for her to come over. She did, moving carefully, aware that her grandmother was watching with concern from behind the counter. "That man," Tank said quietly. "The deputy. You ever see him around the clubhouse?" Maya thought hard. She came to the diner every Saturday, and she'd watched the bikers ride past, and sometimes she'd seen them around town. She tried to remember if she'd ever seen Deputy Colton Hayes near the Iron Wolves. "No," she said finally, "but I saw him talking to someone at the gas station. A guy in a blue shirt who came by the clubhouse last month. You yelled at him." Tank's expression hardened. "What guy?" "I don't know his name, but he was wearing a patch. Not an Iron Wolves patch, different, with a snake on it. If you're still watching, and I know you are because what happens next changes everything, pay attention to this moment." This is when Maya realizes that her observation isn't just saving lives, it's uncovering something much darker. The Iron Wolves clubhouse was a converted warehouse on the edge of town, painted black with a logo the size of a car door. Maya had only been inside once, and that was because her grandmother had needed to drop off a payment for her rent, and Tank had personally escorted her through the front door, one massive hand on the small of her back, making sure everyone knew that Dorothy's granddaughter was under his protection. That night, after closing the diner, Dorothy took Maya there again. "Stay close," her grandmother said, and there was something in her voice that told Maya this wasn't a casual visit. Tank was waiting for them in his office, a surprisingly normal room with a desk, filing cabinets, and a leather chair that looked like it had been custom-made to fit his size. He stood when they came in and closed the door behind them. "Dorothy," he said, nodding to Maya's grandmother, "thank you for bringing her." "What's this about?" Dorothy asked, protective and wary. "I need to ask Maya some questions about the man she saw at the gas station," Tank said. "The one wearing the serpent patch. Is that okay?" Dorothy looked at Maya, then back at Tank. "You're not in any danger from us, are you? Tell me straight." "No," Tank said, and he meant it. "But Maya might have seen something that helps us understand who's trying to hurt us. And that means I can protect her better if I know what she knows." Dorothy nodded slowly and sat down in one of the chairs facing the desk. Tank gestured for Maya to sit beside him, and he pulled up a laptop. On the screen were photographs, mugshots and candid photos of men with hard faces and gang tattoos. "That one," Maya said immediately, pointing to a man with a scarred cheek and cold eyes. "That's who was at the gas station. And I think I saw him driving past the clubhouse the day before my grandmother brought me here the first time." Tank nodded and made a note. "You're sure?" "Positive." Tank closed the laptop and was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's Dmitry Volkov. He works for the Serpents, but he's also been doing contract work. Hired muscle. The kind of man who'll sabotage a bike for the right price." "Then you need to go to the police," Dorothy said firmly. "That's complicated," Tank said. He leaned back in his chair. "Because the deputy, Colton Hayes, I've been doing some research, and I found something interesting. 5 years ago, his sister got into debt with a bad crowd. Drug debt. The kind that doesn't get forgiven. But then the debt disappeared, and Colton has been making deposits into offshore accounts ever since. Small ones, regular ones." He pulled out a piece of paper with bank records printed on it. "I think the Serpents own him," Tank said quietly. "I think they killed the debt in exchange for him looking the other way while they move product through this county. And when I started asking questions about why they were moving into our territory, they decided I was a problem that needed to be solved." Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd made an observation, a simple one. And now it had revealed a conspiracy that reached into law enforcement. "What are you going to do?" Dorothy asked. "The right thing," Tank said. "But I'm going to need help." He looked at Maya. "Would you be willing to help?" Maya looked at her grandmother, then back at Tank. "How?" "There's a state police captain I know. Someone I trust, someone who can't be bought. I need you to tell him exactly what you saw and when you saw it. I need your statement, on record, naming Dmitry Volkov and connecting him to the Serpents and to that deputy." "Won't that be dangerous?" Dorothy asked, fear tight in her voice. "For Maya?" "No," Tank said. "Because once her statement is on record with state police, anything that happens to her becomes federal. They'd be committing a crime that no local cover-up could hide. The Serpents know that. They're a lot of things, but they're not stupid. They don't make moves that bring the feds down on them." He paused, and his eyes, those storm cloud eyes, fixed on Maya. "You did something brave this morning when you told me about the chain," Tank said. "Braver than you know. And I know I'm asking you to do something scary, but sometimes that's what courage looks like. Sometimes it looks like a 10-year-old girl telling the truth to a cop." Captain Sarah Reeves arrived at the state police barracks at 10 p.m. that night, responding to Tank's call. She was a lean woman with sharp eyes and the kind of bearing that told you she'd worked hard for every promotion she'd gotten. Tank had called her years ago, back when he was still finding his way out of the life. He'd been in trouble, facing felony charges, and Sarah had believed him when he said he was trying to change. She'd helped him, had gone to bat for him with judges and prosecutors. He'd kept his word. He'd built the Iron Wolves into something real. Protection for people in the community who needed it, money funneled to scholarship funds and domestic violence shelters. A clear code that violence was a last resort, never a first option. Now Tank was calling in a favor. Maya sat in the state police station, in a small room painted pale blue with one window high up that showed only sky. Captain Reeves sat across from her with a digital recorder and a cup of water. Dorothy was allowed in as her guardian, standing by the wall, her presence a solid anchor. "Just tell me what you saw," Captain Reeves said gently. "Take your time, leave nothing out." So Maya did. She told Reeves about the first time she'd noticed the man with the scarred cheek at the gas station. She described what he was wearing, what vehicle he was driving, approximately what time it was. She described seeing him at the clubhouse, or at least seeing someone who looked like him. She described the chain on Tank's bike, the way the link had looked wrong, the cut that was too deliberate to be accidental. She talked for 45 minutes straight, answering every question Captain Reeves asked, her young voice steady and clear on the recording. When it was done, Captain Reeves turned off the recorder and smiled at Maya. "You did really well. That was very brave." "What happens now?" Maya asked. "Now we investigate," Captain Reeves said. She looked at Dorothy. "I'm going to need you to come in tomorrow to give a statement as well, confirming that you brought your granddaughter to speak with me at Tank's request. And I'm going to need to speak with Tank and his crew about what they know." By 1 a.m., state police had begun moving. They pulled Dmitry Volkov off the street 3 counties over. They obtained warrants to search his apartment and his phone. They found the communication chain, text messages between Volkov and a phone number registered to Colton Hayes, and they found photographs on Volkov's computer, photographs of Tank's bike taken from multiple angles, photographs of the cut being made, dated and time-stamped. By 3 a.m., Deputy Sheriff Colton Hayes was in custody. By dawn, the state police had begun building a case against the Serpents Organization for interstate drug trafficking, money laundering, and attempted murder. And at 6:47 a.m., Maya walked into Rosie's diner with her grandmother, sat down in her regular booth, and ordered scrambled eggs. Tank walked in 12 minutes later. He looked different, lighter somehow, as if the weight of unanswered questions had been lifted. He ordered his usual and came directly to her table. "The state police found everything," he said quietly. "Colton Hayes is going to prison. Dmitry Volkov is going to prison. The Serpents are being investigated by federal agents. Your statement was the thread that unraveled everything." "Udi, what about Deputy Hayes?" Maya asked. "He had a choice," Tank said. "He chose wrong. Now he lives with that. But the important thing is that the town is safer, the road is safer, and you did that. You, a 10-year-old girl who watches and listens and tells the truth." He paused, and then he did something surprising. He took out a small object from his pocket, a patch, black and gold. The Iron Wolves logo stitched into leather. "This isn't official," he said, "but I want you to have it. Not to wear, you're too young for that, but to keep, to remember that you're part of this family now, you're part of us." Maya took the patch, feeling the weight of it in her hand, understanding that she was being given something that meant something. "Thank you," she whispered. 3 months later, the Iron Wolves hosted a gathering at the clubhouse. It wasn't an ordinary meeting, it was a celebration. The prosecutions had moved forward. Colton Hayes had taken a plea deal that guaranteed he'd spend 12 years in federal prison. Dmitry Volkov had received 20 years, and the Serpents organization had been crippled, their leadership arrested on trafficking charges that would keep them locked away for decades. The FBI had even recovered stolen merchandise that the Serpents had been moving through the county, tools, electronics, cash, and had begun returning it to the communities it had been stolen from. Tank stood in the center of the clubhouse. 43 bikers arranged around him and raised his beer. "To Maya," he said, "who saw what others missed, who spoke truth when it would have been easier to stay silent, who showed us that courage has nothing to do with age and everything to do with character." Every biker in the room raised their glass. Maya stood beside Tank, no longer invisible. She'd been given a formal place in the Iron Wolves world. Not as a member, but as something perhaps more important, a daughter of the club, a symbol of what they fought to protect. Her grandmother stood on the other side of the room, crying happy tears. Later, as the party wound down and the bikers began filing out to their bikes, Tank took Maya to the window. Outside, the parking lot gleamed with chrome and leather and the promise of open roads. "You ever want to ride?" Tank asked. "I'm only 10, Maya said. "I know, but someday, when you're old enough, if you want to, I'll teach you. I'll teach you to respect the machine, to watch for details, to understand that every choice you make on the road has consequences." He paused. "And I'll teach you that sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is tell the truth." If you're still here, you know what this meant. Like and subscribe for more stories of courage and redemption, because these stories aren't fiction. They're the road we all travel, and sometimes all it takes is one person seeing what others miss. A year passed. Maya turned 11, then 12. The seasons cycled through, and with each passing month, she felt herself becoming more woven into the fabric of the Iron Wolves world. She spent her Saturday mornings at the diner, same booth, same scrambled eggs, same ritual. But now she also spent her Wednesday afternoons at the Iron Wolves clubhouse, helping Tank in his office. The initial nervousness she'd felt had long since faded, replaced by a kind of comfortable belonging. She'd gotten interested in the business side of the motorcycle club, not the illegal parts, never that, but the legitimate infrastructure that held everything together. The insurance policies, the logistics of coordinating 43 men across 5 counties, the way Tank managed disputes between members with fairness and honor, the paperwork required for the community outreach programs they ran. Tank had started her on a computer training program, teaching her spreadsheets and database management, showing her how information could be organized and analyzed. He wanted to give her options beyond what the small town could offer. He wanted her to be able to leave if she wanted to build a life anywhere in the country, to have the kind of freedom he'd never had at her age. But he also wanted her to know something deeper, that she'd always have a home with the Iron Wolves, that the club would be her foundation no matter where her life took her. One Wednesday afternoon in late September, Maya arrived at the clubhouse to find Tank sitting in his office, with his head in his hands. She'd learned to read his moods by now. This wasn't the usual fatigue of managing the club's operations. This was something heavier. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting down her backpack. Tank looked up, and there was something raw in his expression. "The FBI closed the case file this morning," he said. "Official notification came through. All prosecutions are complete. All appeals have been exhausted." "That's good, isn't it?" Maya asked, though she sensed there was more to the story. "It is," Tank said, "but it also means I have to tell you something I've been waiting to tell you until it was official." The FBI found something else when they were investigating Colton Hayes and Dmitry Volkov. He opened a file on his computer and turned the screen toward her. It showed a series of photographs. Women, ranging in age from 18 to 40, all of them with the kind of bruises and haunted eyes that told a story Tank had warned her about years ago. Colton Hayes wasn't just working for the Serpents on drug trafficking, Tank said quietly. He was helping them with something worse. He was covering up incidents of domestic violence. Women would come to him for help, and instead of protecting them, he'd threaten them, tell them no one would believe them, tell them they should be grateful for the men who hit them. Maya felt her stomach turn. The FBI found documentation, Tank continued. Phone records, text messages, incident reports that Hayes had buried. 12 women, 12 cases that should have been prosecuted but weren't, because Hayes made sure the evidence disappeared. "Oh, what happens now?" Maya asked. "That's the thing," Tank said. "The FBI can't prosecute Hayes again for the same crimes, double jeopardy. But they can use this information to support the women if they want to file new civil suits. And they've been reaching out to those women, offering resources and support." He paused, and his expression shifted into something harder, more determined. "3 of those women came to see me," Tank said. "They wanted to know if the Iron Wolves could help. Not in the way you might think, not violence, not intimidation. They wanted to know if we could help them find lawyers, help them navigate the system, help them rebuild their lives after everything they've been through." "Are you going to help them?" Maya asked. "We already are," Tank said. "We set up a fund. Every Iron Wolves chapter within 3 states is contributing. We've connected them with victim advocates. We've hired lawyers who specialize in domestic violence cases. And we're providing safe housing for women who need to leave situations that are dangerous." Tank stood and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where the bikes gleamed in the afternoon sunlight. "You know what I realized?" Tank said. "Your statement didn't just expose corruption. It created an opening. It showed people in this community that someone was listening, that someone cared, that it was possible to speak truth and have that truth matter." He turned back to face Maya. "And when you spoke, other people found their courage. They started telling their stories, and now we're in a position to help them." Over the next several weeks, something unexpected began to happen throughout the county. Women who had been silent, who had endured abuse and harassment and systematic silence, began coming forward. Some went to the state police. Some went to victim advocates. Some came directly to Tank and the Iron Wolves, asking for help. The club became a quiet refuge point. Dorothy's Diner became a place where women could meet with victim advocates, where they could sit in safe spaces and begin the process of reclaiming their lives. Tank's office became an unofficial clearinghouse for resources, phone numbers for lawyers, addresses of safe houses, information about restraining orders and legal protections. Maya helped organize it all. She created databases, tracked cases, connected women with the resources they needed. She became, in her own way, a crucial part of a network that was quietly transforming the community's response to domestic violence. By the time Maya was 13, there had been 7 successful prosecutions of abusers whose crimes had previously been hidden. 19 women had accessed safe housing. 32 had been connected with legal representation. The Iron Wolves Domestic Violence Fund had grown to over $400 contributed by motorcycle clubs across the region who'd heard about what Tank was doing and wanted to be part of it. Captain Sarah Reeves visited Tank one afternoon to tell him that the state police were considering creating a formal partnership with the Iron Wolves on victim advocacy. Reeves had seen what Tank had built and recognized its value, not as vigilante justice, but as community protection, as a systematic approach to helping people who fell through the cracks of institutional systems. "You've changed this place," Reeves told Tank. "I don't know if you realize how much." Tank shook his head. "Maya changed it," he said, nodding toward where Maya was working at the computer in the corner. "She saw something that needed to be seen, and she had the courage to speak. Everything else follows from that." That Christmas, the Iron Wolves hosted a holiday gathering. It wasn't the usual motorcycle club party. It was quieter, more intentional. It was a celebration for the women who'd found safety and support through the club's programs. There was a dinner catered by a local restaurant, gifts for children who'd been through trauma, gift cards for fresh starts. Maya helped coordinate it all, and she watched as Tank moved through the room, greeting each woman by name, asking about their children, checking in on their progress through the legal system. She saw the gratitude in their eyes, the sense of having been truly seen and protected. One woman, a young mother named Lisa, who'd escaped an abusive situation with her 2 young daughters, pulled Maya aside. "Thank you," Lisa said quietly. "I know you're just a kid, but thank you. Without you, without what you did 5 years ago, I don't know if I would have found the courage to leave." Maya didn't know what to say, so she just hugged Lisa, feeling the weight of that gratitude settle into her shoulders. Later that evening, Tank found Maya standing alone on the balcony, looking out at the lights of the town spread below them like scattered stars. "You feeling the weight of it?" Tank asked, settling beside her. "Sometimes," Maya admitted. "I started something I didn't understand. I was just watching and I saw something wrong, and I said something. I didn't know it would turn into all of this." "That's how change works," Tank said. "It starts with one person noticing something, one person speaking up, and then it ripples out in ways you can't predict or control. You did what you were supposed to do. You told the truth. Everything else has been other people choosing to do the right thing in response to that truth." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried something like prophecy. "You're going to change more than this town," Tank said. "I can feel it. You have something in you, a combination of observation and courage and integrity that doesn't come along very often. Whatever path you choose, it's going to matter." 5 years later, Maya was 17. The morning sun was streaming through the windows of the State Police Academy gymnasium, illuminating the rows of chairs where families and friends sat watching a graduation ceremony. Maya was in the front row, her grandmother beside her holding a tissue and smiling with the kind of pride that made the moment feel sacred. Captain Sarah Reeves stood at the podium, preparing to shake hands with the newest class of state police officers, 42 men and women who'd completed the Academy's rigorous training program. Reeves had specifically invited Maya to attend, knowing that her presence represented something important. Maya had been consulting with the Academy for the past 2 years, helping to develop curriculum on victim advocacy and trauma-informed investigation techniques. Her insights, informed by everything she'd learned through her work with the Iron Wolves, had shaped how the next generation of state police officers would be trained to approach cases involving vulnerable populations. After the ceremony concluded, Reeves found Maya in the crowd outside the gymnasium. The morning was cool, autumn air carrying the smell of fallen leaves and possibility. Reeves looked older now, silver threading through her hair more prominently, but her eyes were the same, sharp, kind, and deeply present. "You're sure about this?" Reeves asked, getting straight to the point in the way she always did. "You've been accepted to 3 universities. You have full scholarships. You could be anything, a professor, a researcher, a criminal psychologist. Are you really sure you want to do the police academy?" Maya nodded. She'd made this decision slowly and deliberately, not rushing into it, considering every angle. She'd talked to Tank about it. She'd talked to her grandmother about it. She'd spent long nights thinking about what she wanted her life to mean. "I'm sure," Maya said. "I want to be the person who helps other people see what I saw. I want to be the one who connects the dots when the system fails people. I want to work in the small towns and the places that get overlooked, where corruption can hide in the margins." She paused. "I want to do what you do. I want to be the captain who believes people when they come forward with hard truths." Reeves studied her for a long moment, and then she smiled. "You're going to be a good cop," Reeves said. Better than good. You're going to be the kind of cop that changes how police departments function. You're going to be the kind of cop that people trust. That evening, there was a party at the Iron Wolves clubhouse. Word had spread through the motorcycle club network. 50 miles in every direction, members came to celebrate. Maya's decision to join the police academy had become significant in Iron Wolves culture. It represented possibility. It represented the idea that the club's mission to protect and serve could extend into legitimate institutions, that members, children, and younger generation associates could pursue honorable paths that aligned with the club's values. Tank had organized it carefully. There were no drugs, no excessive drinking, no violence. It was a celebration of community and legacy. The parking lot was filled with bikes from dozens of different clubs. Iron Wolves, naturally, but also allies from 3 neighboring states. There was food set up in long tables, catered by a restaurant owner whose business Tank had helped save when she was facing bankruptcy. There was music, live music, performed by a guitarist who was the brother of one of the club's members. Dorothy had closed the diner early and was helping coordinate the food service. She moved through the crowd with practiced efficiency, making sure everyone had what they needed. Her face bright with the kind of happiness that only comes from seeing someone you love achieve their dreams. When it was time for toasts, Tank stood at the center of the clubhouse and the room quieted. Every person there, over 200 bikers, family members, community leaders, law enforcement officers, turned their attention to him. This was Tank's gift, the ability to command a room without raising his voice, to create reverence simply through the weight of his presence and his integrity. 5 years ago, Tank began, a kid told me my chain was broken, not in a casual way. She noticed something that could have been missed, something that would have ended badly if she hadn't spoken up. He paused, letting that moment settle. 5 years ago, she spoke truth into a situation that looked impossible. She risked being seen as crazy, or attention-seeking, or intrusive, but she spoke anyway. He turned and looked directly at Maya. Because she did, lives changed, Tank continued. A town changed. A young woman found her calling. And tonight, that young woman is about to enter the State Police Academy to become a cop, to become someone who will spend her life helping people who feel invisible and unheard, just like Maya felt invisible when she first started coming to the diner. The room erupted in applause, but Tank raised his hand, and the sound faded. I want to say something, Tank said, to every young person here. To every kid who thinks they're too young to matter, to every teenager who feels like their observations don't count, to everyone who's ever been afraid to speak up because they thought nobody would listen. He paused, and his storm cloud eyes moved around the room, making contact with different people, with Maya, with Dorothy, with Captain Reeves, with the women who'd found safety through the club's programs, with the younger members of the Iron Wolves who were watching this ceremony with rapt attention. Courage doesn't come from being big or strong or old, Tank said. Courage comes from caring more about what's right than about being comfortable. Courage comes from speaking truth even when your voice shakes. Courage comes from trusting that if you do the right thing, the universe will align to support you. He raised his glass. To Maya, Tank said. To courage. To the chains that hold us together, whether they're chains on a bike or chains of loyalty and honor that bind a community together. To the bonds we forge with people we choose as family. May we never forget that the smallest voices sometimes speak the loudest truths. And may we always be the kind of community that listens when they do. Every person in the room raised their glass and drank. Later, much later, as the party wound down and most of the guests had departed, as the bikes had been loaded up and the visiting club members had ridden back to their home territories, Maya stood alone with Tank on the balcony overlooking the parking lot. Only a handful of bikes remained now, belonging to the Iron Wolves who lived on the property or in the immediate area. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. "You're going to be okay?" Tank asked, his voice carrying the particular gentleness he reserved for people he truly cared about. "I'm going to be better than okay," Maya said. "I'm going to be a cop. I'm going to catch people like Dmitry Volkov. I'm going to make sure that people like Colton Hayes don't hide behind badges and abuse their power." She paused. "I'm going to be the person who listens to kids who see things others miss." "And if you ever need us?" Tank asked. "If the system gets too heavy, if you forget why you started, if you need to remember that there are people who believe in you, if you ever need a place to come home to?" "I know where to find you," Maya said. "I know exactly where home is." She felt Tank's massive hand settle gently on her shoulder, and she understood, as she always did, but more deeply now, with more maturity and more perspective, that family wasn't something you were born into. It was something you chose, something you built through loyalty and honesty and shared values, something that held, like the iron chains on a motorcycle, strong enough to survive anything. Tank was quiet for a long time, just standing with her, looking out at the night. "You know what my old man used to say?" Tank asked finally. "Before he died, when I was just a kid, before everything went wrong. He said that a man's real legacy isn't the money he leaves behind or the property he owns. A man's real legacy is the people he touches, the lives he changes, the values he passes on to the next generation." He turned to look at Maya, and there was something like tears in his eyes. "You're my legacy," Tank said quietly. "Not because you're my daughter, though I've thought of you that way for 5 years. You're my legacy because you're going to take everything you've learned here and you're going to carry it into the world. You're going to be a cop who remembers what it felt like to be invisible. You're going to be a cop who listens to the people that the system overlooks. You're going to change lives the way you changed mine." Maya didn't know what to say, so she just held on to Tank's arm, feeling the strength in it, feeling the reassurance of his presence. "The Iron Wolves will always be here," Tank said. "No matter how far you go, no matter how successful you become, no matter what you achieve, you'll always have a home with us. You'll always be part of this family." They stood together in silence as the night deepened, as the town below them gradually extinguished its lights. And Maya understood in that moment that her journey had never really been about being a hero. It had been about being brave enough to see something, to speak something, and to trust that the universe would align to support the truth. She'd spoken a truth as a 10-year-old girl, and 5 years later, she was about to enter the State Police Academy. By 22, she'd be wearing a badge. By 30, she'd probably be a captain. By 40, she might be a director of state police operations, implementing the victim advocacy protocols she'd helped develop, ensuring that every vulnerable person who came forward would be believed and protected. But none of that mattered as much as this moment, standing on a balcony with the man who'd shown her that loyalty and honor and family chosen were more powerful than violence and corruption ever could be. "Thank you," Maya said finally, "for everything, for believing in me, for making me part of something real." "Thank you," Tank replied, "for reminding me what the Iron Wolves are supposed to be, for showing me that the best revenge against a broken system isn't more breaking. It's building something better. Something stronger, something that actually protects people." They stood together as the night surrounded them, as the promise of tomorrow stretched out before them, as the chain of loyalty and love that connected them held steady, unbreaking, true. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that courage comes in all sizes, and that sometimes the smallest observations change everything, please subscribe to the channel, because we'll be back with more stories of redemption, loyalty, and the ordinary people who do extraordinary things. We'll be back with more tales from the Iron Wolves. We'll be back with stories about promises kept and roads traveled and families chosen. Share this story. Let people know that speaking up matters. Let people know that their observations count. Let people know that home is found in the places where people choose to love and protect each other. Thank you for riding with us. We'll see you down the road.